All right. Well, I'm up here in the truck. I'm getting ready to go down and go to bed soon. It's 9 o'clock. I'm just up here uploading some videos at the house. I'm on the Wi-Fi again at the house. Um, yeah, I started the engine to use the heater, but the engine was making some bad noises, so I was nervous about idling it. I didn't like listening to it, so I shut it down. I've decided I am going to go though tomorrow and get the repairs done on the truck because it does have to be done. And I've already spent quite a bit of money. I've already owed them money for the work they did on Monday, so I'll go ahead and do it, I guess. I don't know, but I think I should still get the Canada pension portion of my pension. And then I have some money coming in from the Buy Me a Coffee fund this week. That'll probably be in the bank on Friday. About $300, something like that. And also, after I pay for these repairs, I'll have about $100 left. Plus, I've got the money from I'll get the money from the beer containers that were saved for me. So that'll be well. I know I've got like $58 in beer cans alone, and then there's the bottles. So we'll see anyway. Um, I would say roughly $70 there. So that should be enough to get me through, you know. Um, but I'm definitely going to the lawyers to see about the pension thing to know where I stand with that and to know what I should do because they want me to sign an agreement, and I'm not prepared to do that until I know more. I think I need to get some advice before I do that. And as far as the tax thing goes, like I say, I'll go to H&R Block. I'll tell them what's going on. I was really counting on that money to pay down my debts, and it's going to bugger me up if I don't get it. And so I'm going to try to get it anyway. And I've been told I'm entitled to it. So I'm going to go back to H&R Block and talk to them. I'll do that tomorrow, and I'll see what they say. Um, yeah, it's funny up here in Canada. The argument that people make, and I've had this many times from many people about our government and so on, when I say that our government is corrupt or whatever and that it isn't really a free country and so on, people get wicked mad at me, and they'll say, well, um, other countries are worse. And to me, I never really understood that argument. It never resonated with me. And I'm not saying that there aren't worse countries out there. I'm sure there are. But here's the thing. To me, it's sort of like saying, that guy is not so bad because he's just a rapist. Some rapists also kill their victims. Like at least he's not like a Ted Bundy type of a rapist who actually kills his victims. And therefore he's not so bad, and we should just tolerate him going around committing rape because he's at least not as bad as that other rapist who was also a murderer. It's sort of like that. That's how I hear it when people say that. It's like, no, we shouldn't tolerate any of it. We shouldn't tolerate the serial killer rapist, nor should we tolerate the rapist. They're both bad. I would agree that the serial killer rapist does even more harm and therefore is worse. But that doesn't mean we should tolerate the regular rapist who isn't a serial killer. And that's just how I look at it anyway. I mean, just because he isn't as bad, what he does is still intolerable and we shouldn't put up with it. That's how I look at it anyway. But, and like I say, I've seen the bad side of Canada too many times, and I've seen how corrupt it can actually be. And I understand that the majority of people haven't, and so they don't really understand how bad it can get, and they don't really believe that it can get as bad as it can get. I think during the whole COVID-19 thing, a lot of people had their eyes opened. A lot of people did see that other side, which they hadn't seen before, which is a side of the government that I had seen many times before. And I do find there are more people now who believe me that the government isn't what we have been told it was anyway, and that Canada isn't what we've been told it is. We have an awful lot of problems in this country, and a lot of it does boil down to corruption, you know. A lot of it boils down to corruption. And, yeah, we got to do something about that, you know. We really do. Because it's at the point now where we're being affected in a big way. Some of us more so than others, yes. I'm being affected more than a lot of people, but there are people who have been affected even worse than me by it. And, you know, I would say definitely I've been affected by it, and I would think more than the average person. But like I say, I do know people who are affected by it, who have been affected worse than I have been too. And the bottom line is, it ain't tolerable to have all this corruption. And I disapprove of a lot of the stuff that I see happening here. And people telling me I should leave Canada then or whatever. Well, why should I get driven out? Because I disapprove of things that I see happening. And why am I not allowed to say that I disapprove? Other people are allowed to say that they support these things. I mean, there'd be nobody telling me if I like when I talk about the rainbow crosswalks and the pride celebrations and stuff, and I say I disapprove of that, people will say, well, then leave Canada. You know, and it's kind of like, well, wait a minute. If I was going on about how much I approve of it, you'd be saying, you wouldn't say that. You'd be saying that I'm welcome here. But because I disapprove of it, you're telling me I should leave. Well, why should I have to leave because I disapprove of it? I'm entitled to disapprove of it. And if we really are living in a free country like people are claiming we are, then I'm entitled to disapprove of it as much as other people are entitled to approve of it. Now, I'm not entitled, say, to take a gun down to the Pride Parade and start shooting people. I'm not entitled to do that. I'm not entitled to target certain people and hurt them, you know, harass them and hurt them and so on. And I have no desire to do any of that anyway. But I am entitled to say that I disapprove of it, you know. I am entitled to do that I disapprove of celebrating a sexual orientation, basically. And I disapprove of laws that say that you have to use somebody's pronouns or you go to jail, which we have in Canada now. I disapprove of the emphasis being placed on that. I disapprove of the monopolization of public spaces by a small percentage of society, of the people in society who happen to be of a certain orientation. I disapprove of biological men serving time in women's prisons, which is happening here now. I disapprove of biological men being in changing facilities with females, which again is happening here now. I mean, I mentioned the example of the guy in Southern Ontario who's 50 years old and identifies as a 13-year-old girl and is on a swim team with a bunch of 13-year-old girls. You know, and he's in there changing with them and all the rest of it and showering with them. I don't think that should be happening. I disapprove of it. And I should not have to leave Canada because I disapprove of that. And in fact, as far as I'm concerned, anybody in their right mind would disapprove of that. The fact that people aren't making a bigger stink about it concerns me for the mental health of the country. That people actually seem to be okay with this, with that sort of thing. And the funny thing about that 50-year-old man is he identifies as a 13-year-old girl in the change room, But yet otherwise he lives like a 50-year-old man. And that's the thing with a lot of these guys. You know, they don't live like what they identify as, except when it suits them. You know, I mean, if you really are a 13-year-old girl, you don't drive a car, you know, you live with a parent or a guardian, you go to school, you have a bedtime and a curfew and everything else, you know, like there's a whole bunch of rules that you have to follow if you're a 13-year-old girl. You don't have the comfort of riding home in your car from the pool. You got to stand on the corner and wait for the bus, or you got to stand outside and wait for your parents to come pick you up, or whatever. That's what you got to do when you're a 13-year-old girl. So right there, even, I know it's a put on, and I know that what that really is a pedophile who's taken advantage of the stupid system, of the system that's so stupid that it protects him while he's doing his perverse stuff. And yeah, I'm just disgusted that that's happening here. And I have every right to be disgusted, and I have every right to say I'm disgusted. And if people disagree with me, they have every right to disagree with me. They have every right to say, no, I think it's a good thing. I mean, I'll kind of wonder about them if they say that for sure, but they're entitled to say it. I'll probably ask them how so, you know, because I honestly can't figure out how anybody could think that's a good thing. Maybe they can enlighten me. Maybe they can show it to me from an angle I haven't seen it from yet, or whatever, that I just don't have the imagination to see it from, or whatever. But as things stand, I can't approve of it, you know. And my failure to approve of these things, again, doesn't mean that I should be sent into exile. You know, I mean, so yeah, I mean, I'm going to continue to say that we got a crooked government here, because we do have a crooked government here. And I'm going to continue to say that there's problems here. There's big problems. I don't think we solve big problems by pretending that they're not that they aren't there, or by focusing on the big problems that are happening elsewhere. My mother one time told me that Canada is a good country because they beat up homosexuals in Russia. Okay, no, that doesn't prove Canada's a good country. It proves that there's an issue in Russia, because they shouldn't be doing that. So it proves there's an issue in Russia, but it doesn't prove that Canada's a good country. You know? If I say, well, he's a good guy because that guy over there is a good guy, because that guy over there is a bad guy, well, he's a good guy because that guy over there is a bad guy, that only works if there can only be one bad guy. And if we establish that this guy over here is a bad guy, well, then virtually everybody else is a good guy. So we can say, okay, everybody but him is a good guy. He's a bad guy. Everybody but him is good. But of course, we know that's not realistic. You know, the world is full of bad guys. There can be more than one, and there is more than one. But anyway, in Canada, we gone to the opposite extreme where we're worshiping homosexuals. You know, it's like a religion here. And to me, that's also unhealthy. And the fact that I think that's unhealthy doesn't mean that I think it's good that they're beating them up in Russia. I don't think that's good. And what I said to my mother is, well, then shame on Russia for doing that. Shame on them for that. But the fact that Russia does that proves they have a problem, for sure. But it doesn't prove that Canada's a good country. She says, well, how does it not prove Canada's a good country? Because we don't do that here. Okay, no, but we do other things here. And we go to opposite sick extremes here, you know. I mean, and you know, so yeah, we're not perfect either. And I know we never will be because we're living in a fallen and imperfect world. But we need to at least be willing to address our own corruption and our own stupidity and so on. And I don't think there's anything wrong with pointing out, like I say in that example that I gave of the guy on the 13-year-old girl swim team. I don't think there's anything wrong with me pointing out, hey, wait a minute, that guy's living like a 50-year-old man in every other respect. I don't think there's anything wrong with me pointing that out. And so, okay, it's a put on. What he actually is a pedophile. He doesn't identify as a 13-year-old girl. He says he does, but in reality, what he is he's a guy that likes to look at naked 13-year-old girls. And he likes to be naked around 13-year-old girls. And by definition, that makes him a pedophile. And that's what he is. And the fact that I'm living in a country where the government says that I just committed a hate crime by saying that, when all I did is apply just observation. All I did was observe the reality of the situation. I watched the Rebel News reporter, David Menzies, follow that guy out of the swimming pool and to his car. The guy got in his car and drove off with David Menzies on his tail, following him across the parking lot. And I thought to myself, wait a minute. I thought he identifies as a 13-year-old girl. 13-year-old girls don't own cars. It's funny, you're not living like a 13-year-old girl except for one thing. So then it wasn't hard for me to put things together and say, okay, what he is really is a pedophile. And he's using the identifying as a 13-year-old girl thing, to get into a place where he has no business being, so he can perv, basically, on little girls. Look, if the fox comes along and says I identify as a chicken, should the farmer be legally bound to let the fox into the hen house? I don't think so. Especially when the fox is making no effort to live like a chicken. He's not even trying to live like a chicken. In every respect, the fox presents as a fox, except that he says he's a chicken. I think that's just a little too convenient. You can't come into my hen house. I think that's a perfectly sensible answer. But we have a government that says, oh no, that's discriminatory. You got to open the door and let that fox into your hen house, or you're breaking the law. Now, to me, that's an issue. To me, that shows that we have a problem in this country. And it isn't just that. There's so many other things. When I was used as a guinea pig for drug experiments, when I was 8 years old, I found out since that our government sanctioned all that. And it was happening across the country. Our government gave its blessing to all that. There are so many other things that have happened that I know about, that have happened to me, and that have happened to others that I know. People who have been threatened by the RCMP because they were outspoken about issues the government didn't want us talking about. And so on like that. People who were told they'd be made to disappear. All sorts of things. So yeah, I had a friend who worked in a car dealership as a mechanic years and years ago. And some of the mechanics in there were part of a car theft ring. He wasn't personally, but some of them were. And what they were doing is they were taking stolen cars into the shop after hours, and they were changing the serial numbers on them. And really illegal stuff. Well, my friend, he got picked up by the Ottawa police, and it was in the city of Ottawa where all this was happening. He got picked up by the city of Ottawa police, taken down to the police station, and they beat the hell out of him. and they stripped him naked, and they clamped a pair of vice grips to the head of his cock. And every time he refused to answer a question, they turned that little knob there, and just tightened up those jaws just a little bit more, And they put that man through that for days, tortured him day after day, because they wanted him to give up the ones that were mixed up in it, as they figured he must know something. And he did. But he wasn't going to tell them because he'd have been killed. There were mob connections there and everything else. It would have been a death sentence for him to open his mouth and to tell them what he knew. But they spent like 3 days torturing that man. And that's in this country, and I know that happened. So, I know probably more than I should know about what goes on here from my own experiences and through the experiences of other people. And see, other people will open up to me because they know that I have been in some pretty bad situations with our government. And so they'll open up to me where they wouldn't open up to the average Canadian, who would tell them to quit their whining and call them a liar and tell them that they should be grateful they don't live in Lower Scribobia, where things are really bad. And so, again, it's just that whole attitude and that argument that I never understood. Things are good here because they're bad elsewhere. Well, okay, I'll grant you there are places that are worse. There are. But that doesn't make what's happening here acceptable. And that doesn't mean we should just put up with it, or we shouldn't say anything about it, or whatever. That's, So yeah, I'm going to continue to speak about it because I don't like the things that I'm seeing. I don't like what's going on here. And I think that certain things need to be brought out of the darkness and into the light. Because that's how they get dealt with. Anyway, that's it for now. That's what happened during the whole scamdemic, is a lot of corruption was brought out to the light. And things have not been the same since then. And that's partially because people have become disillusioned. Anyway, that's it. We'll talk to you later.